So you see I'm using quite a vigorous jigging motion there. Now, I knew that was a fish because that has actually stopped, it didn't go back down. Righto, this one's been a long time coming, and I do apologise, but probably one of the most requested episodes I get is jigging. How I jig, what do I use, what am I looking for, and basically how do I catch fish. Before I start, I have to say, absolutely no expert on this subject. I'm just going to run through what works for me and what I kind of use to get the fish that I do on the channel, that you see on the channel, because I love jigging. I haven't done a hell of a lot of it, but since I came up to Queensland, I turned into a massive closet jigger because it is an absolute world of fun. So, the most important thing with any type of fishing really, but particularly so with jigging, is you've got to find your ground. So before we even start on the gear, let's go inside. We need to go to the computer. I know that sounds strange, to go to the computer to find fish, but that's exactly where we're going. See you in there. Righto, so it might sound strange, but every good jigging trip starts right here at the computer desk. And EatMeLures. EatMeLures is the system that I use to find ground. Now, it's critical, particularly when you're fishing somewhere like the Great Barrier Reef, with the distances involved, that you have a rough idea, at least, of where you're going to fish on any given day. And a program like EatMeLures is my go-to sort of mapping system of choice, because it allows me to sit here, take my time, look for ground and rocks and what have you that I think might be worth closer investigation when you're actually out there on the water. And I've found it absolutely fantastic as a means to find fish. So I'll just talk you through what I kind of do and what I look for on EatMeLures. Righto, so EatMeLures. This is always my first port of call whenever I want to go jigging or bottom fishing or even top water, because I'll speak about that in a moment, but it's got multiple overlays, one of which is top water, which I find fantastic for finding GTs. But we're talking jigging today, and let's get stuck into it. So you've opened up EatMeLures, you've signed on for an annual subscription using my Rob Taylor discount code, which is ROB10. I'll put that in the description below. And you are ready to rock and roll. So what I'll do is I'll just show you a real life example of a rock that I found that we got absolutely hosed on, and you'll see the coordinates come up here, and some people might say that's silly, but to get to this rock, not everyone's going to be able to do it, so it's all right. But I'm just going to give you a great example. I actually will give you a spot here if you want to go and try and jig it. So this is out on the hard line of the Great Barrier Reef. So I wanted to check out these three rocks here. 1, 2, 3. This one was a dud, even though it was very likely looking piece of structure, but in saying that, we only fished it very quickly, and you know, as we all know as fishermen, one spot can fire one day and then be dead the next. But this little puppy in here, holy lordy, did we get hosed here. So you look at that on EatMeLures and you can see that we've got a fairly good rise. We've got sort of, bottom depth here is 76 all around it. And it comes up to 60. So you've got a fairly significant piece of structure and a little sister rock here. Now both of these we got absolutely hammered on. We also got really good trout and red emperor on. So that just goes to show you the usefulness of this tool, the EatMeLures system, to find new ground. And you can see the kind of data that you get with EatMeLures is absolutely fantastic. You can see up here all these little rocks, and all worth checking out. These pimples, all that kind of stuff. We've got contour lines, and you've got multiple overlays. Like I said, you've got top water, original, deep, magma. I use this paleo maps, but in also the overlays, you've got things like your zoning, marine park zoning. So I know that if I'm over here, I'm in a world of hurt if the coppers get me, but over here, it's good to go, and I can look for rocks in that space. And it allows you then to go and focus your efforts where you need to be. Okay, so now we've covered how you find ground and where you seek out your fish so you can actually start jigging. We're going to get stuck into what gear do we use, how we rig it all up, and how do we actually use it. So in the world of jigging, there is an absolute vast array of options, from rods and reels to the braid you want to use, to your leaders, to the jigs, to your assists, to how you set them up, how you rig them.
even how you pack them. You know, there's so many options out there in jigging alone that can be quite bewildering. There's no hard and fast rules with it, and again, I just repeat this, that this is just all I'd use, and I found it pretty successful, but there's 100,000 different opinions on what actually works in the world of jigging. But let's get stuck into what I use. First things first, let's look at outfits. Now, you've seen me use this little beauty time and time again on the channel. This is a Ocean's Legacy slow element PE 3 to 4 rod. It's one of those weird looking things that obviously when the guy was building it, he had far too many beers because the runners start up the top, but at the tip they're completely on the other side of the rod. That's for balance. So when you're jigging, these wraparound guides type rods are really for balance. Now, is it essential? No, and you'll see plenty of rods on the market that just have straight inline runners, and they're for jigging, and they're just as good in my view. But this little battler of a rod has been with me for years, and it's knocked over some massive fish, including big GTs, massive red emperor, and it just won't quit. And I just find it a wholly practical rod to use, and I have a ball with it. The reel is a Daiwa Lexa 300 bait caster profile. A lot of people sort of say, bait casters just aren't, bait caster profiles just aren't cut out for jigging. This thing again, this whole outfit with this reel has knocked over some pretty big fish, so I'd argue the point that it is actually a purpose-built jigging reel and really does serve its purpose, and you can really knock over trophy fish with it. I've got that spooled at the moment with cast jigging braid. We'll talk about that in a moment. But the beauty of this is it's lightweight. It's obviously got the extended butt here, which is essential. One of the essential things I've found for jigging rods is this extended butt. And we'll explain that in a moment when we go outside and I go through some of the actions that you can use to really get your jig working optimally. But that is very typical of jigging rods, this real extended butt profile. And I find that this whole outfit just slips into one hand so easily. And you'll find that unlike some styles of fishing with jigging, your thumb plays a really huge role in both feathering the jig as it's descending, feeling for bites, locking up on fish. So I think when you can have that kind of trigger grip profile on a jigging rod with a small reel, and the other critical thing I found here is level line when you're jigging. You don't want to have to fart around trying to spread your line on your retrieves. This bait caster profile, my preference. Again, just a preference. So then moving on to the actual tackle that I use. Like I said, let's cover off braids first. Now there's a few good braids on the market. My preference, hands down, is ammonite jigging braid. I went into Mackay Tackle World the other day. They didn't have any left in PE4, so I had to buy this cast jigging braid. If you ask me which one I prefer, that's the only one you want to get. This one, I keep having problems with rod tip wraps. It popped a couple of times without a hell of a lot of pressure on it. So don't get cast, get ammonite. There's also like Daiwa, and a lot of the big companies have all different types of braids. I just find the ammonite, when you actually feel that, it's very, very thin. So that's a PE5, that one there. And wow, it feels like PE2 to 3. So very slim profile and diameter for jigging, which is great, which is what you want because it helps give that jig maximum action underwater. Leaders, again, really a personal choice. And this is where cast does get some redemption because I've been primarily using this, the cast leader, and it's been fantastic. I've been using it on GTs and jigging. Generally, when I'm jigging out here on the reef, I'll be running PE4 braid with 80-pound cast leader line. But like I said, there's plenty of other types you can use. Black Magic I also like. That's the fluorocarbon version of Black Magic. That's also very good. Jinkai, an old favourite. Never forget Jinkai. That's a great leader line. You cannot get into jigging unless you get a decent set of split ring pliers. Doesn't matter what type, there's actually heaps of brands on the market. Just find a pair that works for you because some are great, some are a bit spastic, but yeah, there's all different weird looking things. But you cannot rig your jigging gear without a decent set of split ring pliers. So another area that gets quite bewildering for people is the world of assists. What do you use? Singles, doubles, fat ones, skinny ones, big ones, tall ones. Look, it really comes down to, again, the type of jigging you're doing, the species you're chasing, and personal preference to a degree. So what I mean by that is you would not use these little micro assists on a dogtooth tuna jig. It's kind of common sense. If I want to go jigging for doggies, I'll be using heavyweight assists, probably singles like this, because they're a brutal fish and they will find a weakness in your assists very, very quickly. However, if I'm say chasing red emperor, coral trout on a 100 gram jig, like my personal favourite, the Berserker jaw slinger, I'll be using sort of twin assists in that sort of 2.20 size range. These are sea rangers, they're quite a good assist. But again, it's personal preference. If I'm doing micro jigging, then I'll go right down in size to the very, very small assists, like on these great little glass eye lures, which are Australian made lure. They're fantastic. We'll get into those in a minute. So assist, really you want to match up the size of your assist to the type of fishing and the species you're chasing, and also the shape and style of your jig. What you really want to be aiming for is you want to try and get, in terms of length of the assist, it's got to be at least around that midway point of the jig. You don't want to set them up too high. Some people will actually add another assist off the bottom. You can do that too. But I just like, in terms of length, to have that sort of really assist hook sitting sort of midway on your jig, because then as that's going up and down, when the fish hits the main body of the jig, you're kind of pretty sure that your hook's going to be in range for connection. So you can see on a lot of these, those kind of assists are coming down almost to the midway point. So that's your assist hooks. I guess the best way to probably get familiar with the best type of hook for the jig you're using is talk to your local tackle shop. The boys in there always know what they're doing. Have a chat with them about the style of jigging you want to do, the species you're chasing, and the jigs you're going to use, and they'll hook you up with some spare assists. But always take some spare assists out, because a lot of times you'll go through assists more than you will jigs, because the ropes that sort of connect them get a bit haggard after a few fish. So always have a couple of spare ones in your bag, different sizes, suitable for different jigs. Righto, so the fun part, let's talk about the jigs themselves. The absolute range of jigs on the market at the moment is quite perplexing. If you're just getting into it, it can be really quite daunting when you walk into a tackle shop and look at the jig wall and think to yourself, what the hell am I going to use? So really, I kind of keep it pretty simple in terms of, if I'm chasing, say, dogtooth tuna, then there are specific types of jigs that I will use for that. Like I mentioned before, they've got purpose-built assists. They're really heavy duty. These are called knife jigs. Now, they're not just for doggies. You can use these down south, say, chasing kingfish, or deep water jigging for whatever lives down in 300 metres. But these are big, 200 gram. They go up, 300-400 grams, because they're a deep water jig. But they're a knife jig, and they're designed to be used really fast, which will go through action in a little minute. So they are a purpose-built jig for specific species. I wouldn't use these for, say, red emperor or general jigging out on the reef. I'm targeting something like doggies or kings down south, then that's the jig I'll go for. As for my favourite jigs, in terms of a good general all-purpose jig that will catch a range of species in a variety of depths, and you would have all seen this from the channel, but I can't go past Berserkers. Now, Berserker brings out two types of jigs at the moment. I love both of them. They are a little bit different in terms of how you use them and what you chase with them, but these are probably my favourite. Now, these don't have the standard Berserker hooks in them, because again, like I said to you, the assist will wear out faster than your jig. So this is called the Berserker jaw slinger, and that's a slightly larger size. I think that's a 120. That one's about probably an 80. These are a fantastic all-round general purpose jig. I've caught everything on these, from coral trout, cobia, red emperor. You can work them in a variety of ways, fast, slow, and they're user-friendly, and they don't require much kind of experience to get them working to catch fish. The other one that Berserker makes, which is a fantastic one, and I find that this really sharp hooks, is a fantastic jig for fish like coral trout. It's called the Berserker Chaos. Now, it's more of a leaf profile jig, so it's a little bit broader, and it has much more of a flutter action. So, and that's your standard Berserker assist on there. Got the little sexy squid thing, which I think also helps make these lures the lures they are. But with that flutter profile, slightly slower action, so it's a lift and sort of drop. 9 times out of 10, you find these get hammered on the drop. But if I want to fill the box with coral trout, I'll go to a Berserker Chaos every day of the week. Micro jigs. So if I want to work a reef edge, or I'm in the shallows and I'm chasing things like, say, stripies or coral trout, these little micro jigs are fantastic. There's heaps on the market, again, like I said. I'm loving these at the moment. Glass eye lures, Australian made, from an Australian company down in Sydney. made of glass, 17 gram, fantastic for real light tackle jigging on reef edges and in the shallows. Here's a similar offering which I use. These are called a Bosley from Japan. The good thing about these is that it's a 100 gram jig, that one, and you can see the size of it. But if I want to fish slightly deeper but still micro jig, Bosleys are great. 100 gram versus 17 grams, so that's probably a deeper water one. That's your shallow one. But micro jigging is an absolute ball of fun. And then, like I said, just go in any of your tackle shop. There are so many jigs on the market. You know, so many brands are now in a black magic, mustard. But these are all your sort of general purpose type jigs. But for me, I can't go past Berserkers. I started using them a while ago. Yes, I use them pretty much exclusively now. There is a code, which I'll put down below if you want to buy some for yourself. But Jaw Slingers and Chaos, I find, for general purpose jigging, they are probably my go-to lures. Word is that Berserkers also bringing out the dogtooth tuna knife jig as well, so keep your eye on the market for that one. And finally, in terms of terminal tackle, you don't need a hell of a lot, but you will need split rings. These are too big, obviously, but I'm just showing you. These are my GT split rings, but go into your tackle shop, ask them for some really strong jigging split rings. Get a variety of sizes, because when you see how a jig is rigged, you see you have the jig itself, then you have a split ring, then you have a solid ring, which is where your assist is, which connects your assist to the jig, and you're always tying off to that solid ring there. But like I said, if you want to change over your assists, or the fish are going through them too quickly, then you will need some split rings just to be able to do that. So let's just talk about rigging up. So like I said, I run PE4 on this outfit. I've got 80 pound cast mono leader, and I run an FG knot on that. And then if I want to connect a jig, I use a standard loop knot. So yeah, just a loop, very simple. Good easy one. Again, like I said, yeah, can't stress this enough. Always just tie off to the solid ring, not the split ring. So just a standard loop knot. I find with a loop knot just gives me maximum free movement for the jig. Simple as that. There's big cutters. Cut tag off, like so, and that's it. Very simple loop knot. But again, just always remember, tie after the solid. And that really is it in terms of what to use, how you rig it up. Let's go outside now, and I'll just show you some actions. Righto, so you got yourself sorted, you got your whiz-bang jigging outfit, you got your best jig on, assists are good, you're ready to rock, you're out in your boat, you found your mark, fish lighting up the sounder. What do? Righto, first of all, pretty simple, put in a free spool, drop that puppy straight down to the bottom. What I always make sure I do is I've got a real slight thumb on the spool. So as that spool's unloading line and the jig's dropping down, I'm just feathering it with my thumb. A lot of times, the fish will hit that on the way down the jig. So you can feel that obviously through your rod as well, but the sensitivity really is on the spool. And also, if I'm in mackerel water, I don't want the jig to flutter down too much, because sometimes mackerel will hit it and they'll snip you off. So I want to do a straight dive and slightly thumbing it to make that happen a bit quicker. Once you've hit the bottom, engage your reel, make sure your drag's set, and you're ready to go. So how do you make your jig work? Well, there's a couple of different ways, and again, this is all I use. There's plenty of different opinions out there on what's the best technique, but this seems to work best for me, particularly when I'm chasing reds and coral trout, nanny guy, that type of thing. And herein lies the reason behind the extended butt. So you're tucking that up on your arm like that. You've got your trigger grip, so you can use whatever finger is most comfortable for you. Thumb on the spool, you've engaged, you're ready to go. What I like to do is to get that jig dancing up. You only want to bring it up about 5 meters off the bottom. There's a number of ways you can do it, and I use a relatively quick retrieve style. So as I'm jigging, I'm just doing little jigs like this. Basically, you'll see the jig doing that in the water. But I don't want to just keep the jig stationary. I want the jig to keep coming up through the water column. So as I'm jigging, I'm just doing little half turns on the handle. So jig, just like that. So I can either do that quite slow like that, or I can do it quick. And what I'll do, if I'm not getting hits, I'll mix up the retrieve speed and where I bring the jig up to in the water column, and sometimes that'll get the hit. So really just a little action just like this. Not tense, just relax, so you can do it all day, and then little half turns on the handle as you jig it. And you vary your speed. Slow it right down. Now there's other types of retrieves, of course. There's just a lift, and then just letting it flutter back down. That works quite well with that leaf profile jig that I was showing you. So it's just a lift, and then dropping it down, lift, dropping it down, lift, dropping it down slowly. And again, you'll feel, probably more often than not, the fish hitting that jig as it flutters back down. So lift, flutter back down, jig, like that. Really, they're probably the main two kind of techniques that you want to learn. There are, like I said, heaps of different ways you can actually jig and get that jig moving, but they're probably the two most easy if you're just chasing bottom fish like red emperor, coral trout, and a guy. Lift, drop it down, lift, mix them up, do both in a given retrieve. If you're using the knife jig, obviously you're probably using egg beater outfish, and that's real faster. But you gotta make sure you go to the gym before you start doing that stuff, because after about 3 or 4 of those, I'm cactus. All right, time to get on the water. Let's go. Okay, so now the fun part. We've talked about how to find ground. We've talked about what gear to use. Now we're just going to put it all into action. See if we can find something. I'm in 50 metres of water here. And I've just come over. What I'll show you is a likely looking patch of fish. No guarantees we're going to get them to bite on it. But this is a little lump I found on bathy maps using those steps I showed you. And one of the things I'm just doing here is I'm just having a quick spin around the whole area, just seeing if there are other fish, and there is. So what I'm doing is I'm marking these fish. So you'll see that's the patch I've just driven over. And it's still going. And it's not much of a lump, and it didn't show as much of a lump on bathy maps. Now I don't know whether they're going to be Trevally or Nanny Guy or whatever. We will drop down into that. So over here, that's where I've marked the fish I did see. Sorry, this is where I've marked the lump of bathy maps, that one there. These are the ones that I've just picked up that I've been driving around here. So I'm going to go up. I know my drift is that way. So what I did is I cut the motor off here, and the drift started going that way. And there we go. There's the fish on the bottom. That's all from bathy maps. So I'm going to go up a little bit to about here. I know my drift's going to go that way. I want to go right through that dot there. That'll put me over that. So I'll go up here and I'll swing around a little bit. More fish coming through on the sounder. So that's kind of the line I want. It's a pretty quick drift, and I'm in 50 metres, so I've just increased my jig size to a 120. I had a 100 on. So that's the way I'm going to go. That way. So just kick that boat forward. Like that. Now, always tilt your motor one way, so I'm tilting this round to the left. Just like that. What that does is it ensures that your boat's drifting in the same direction every time. Alright, let's get down there quickly. Shut up. So that's 120. Normally, if you watch my channel, I'll be using a Berserker jaw slinger, but I got hose this morning on them all. This friggin' cast braid, I'll tell you, I did talk about the different types of jigging braid out there, and I did recommend cast. Fucking don't buy it. Price and shit out. Get the ammonite like this. It's ticked on a book. Well, so 50 metres is quite a long drop. That's why I've got on the 120. And because I just dicked around, because that braid wrapping around the tip like I've been doing all day, I've actually overshot the fish. So I'll have to go back and do it again. But we'll have to try here. There's a few little specks still showing up. What's that? Already. So I'll let that jig hit the bottom. What I'm doing is I'm feathering it with my thumb as it goes down.
So it's a nice straight fall. As soon as it hits the bottom, straight into it. You only want to pull it up probably 5 metres tops. There's heaps of different actions you can use. There's no single way to do slow pitch. You can do it sort of slow like this. And at the end you can do a bit of a long sweep. Just kind of stay connected as you drop it back down. Like that. But I prefer a fairly frantic action in the jig. We overshot the fish though. If you overshoot, don't worry about it, just bring your jig in, go back up, reset your... Oh shit! What happened then? On the line. Sometimes you get them when you're not jigging. Jesus! Hey, there was a big shark down there before, so he's going to get eaten this thing a bit. Sometimes that can happen. You can get them on fish on the wine, you can get them on the drop. So always. Oh, there's a shark on it now. Oh, shark. That's a shark. Mongrel. That's how you jig. Right, retie. Drop again. Okay, so we've dropped down again, 120. 43 metres or so. We've come actually up on the top of this lump. Just missed him a little bit. Retied a leader, which you should do. I'm a bit lazy sometimes. Right. You pay the price for that. Chicken drags. I had mine locked up then from that shark, so it was a hook a really good fish right now. Rookie move, I get hosed. If the drag's too tight. So you can see I'm using quite a vigorous jigging motion there. Now I knew that was a fish because that has actually stopped and didn't go back down. So I jigged that up about 5 metres. And I put it in freeze fall. Gravity dictates it should have started falling straight away, yet it didn't. So I knew that a fish had picked that up and was lifting it. And this is a good fish. Now, our problem's going to be the sharks. When you're in shark country like this, you've got no choice but to just go as hard as you can. Not getting tail beats, I'm hopeful. I'm getting tail beats here. Sharks there, no. Red. Cobia. Oh. Oh. I think I've gone that hard in the cobia before. Other species you pick up jigging quite a lot of cobia. Oh, there's a shark down there too. It's off. Woo! So I'm gonna bring a green cobia in. Oh. Good. Wanker. I will put that gap in, yeah. Trying not to kill you, dickhead.
And that's just how peaceful jigging can be. But you do get some good fish doing it. Great style fish and jigging. So encourage you to go out and give it a try. I was going to keep him because Mrs. loves him, but he's a big fish and I'll try and get a few more trout and that'll do us. Nice. Whoa! Oh, I gotta let this bloke go. Hectic. Hectic feelings. No. Now I do love them, they're actually a bloody great fish. Peaceful art of jigging.